Welcome to the East County Sports Report, brought to you by eastcountysports.com. It's the final week of the high school football season, and we're going to talk a little bit about those league titles that were handed out last week. Or not really handed out, they were earned, and also give you a preview of the last week of the season. So starting out with Helix getting another league title, and they won in big fashion last week. Helix is just really the class of the East County.
Yeah, the third straight Hills League title for Helix. They went out and beat Grossmont pretty handily. It was a mismatch,
Sure.
Actually. Everybody thought maybe Grossmont was going to come in and give them a battle, and just Helix, you're right. I mean, they're just super elite right now, and that's just what happened, and Helix wins the championship. They got that patch, clinched their share anyway, but
Sure.
They'll wrap it up this week against Valhalla.
Well, looking at those highlights that we got, really great highlights from this last week, Helix just found all kinds of ways to score. I mean, they just literally found every imaginable way to score. And Grossmont, I'm sure, will do well in the playoffs, but Helix, congratulations on yet another league title. Of course, another congratulations going out to Granite Hills. They get themselves a league title as well, as they were victorious this past week.
Absolutely, and a lot of it was due to Jake Siegfried once again, and it was a pretty tight game for the most part. Monte Vista put up some pretty good defense, but as we saw in one of the highlights, Jake going around and getting some good blocking and sweeping around to the right and grabbing a couple of touchdowns. He's always good with his legs. He's not having to throw so often. And then you got the added back of Kevon, which he's been a great addition for 5 weeks now. But this is the third in a row. All they have to do is beat El Cajon Valley, and they'll clinch their third title in a row. And for Granite Hills, that's a pretty big deal. They're going out there. From what I heard, though, from Coach Estes from Santana, the Braves actually played a good game defensively for the first half. I mean, it was 14-10 at the half, and then the wheels fell off. So we'll see what happens, but I definitely think that Granite Hills by a few.
All right. So rolling into the last week, you'd think, well, what are these games for? Well, they're for getting tuned up for the playoffs, putting some packages in, and also just playing some good football, good quality opponents. We start off with Grossmont at West Hills. This should be a pretty fun game.
Absolutely. You have West Hills that's coming in, and they've had, this last one they had, winning on the interception at the end of the game, on that was huge. El Cap was driving. Ryan Jewell, I tell you, that guy is everywhere. Defensively, offensively, he's catching passes from the quarterback, but he's catching passes from the other quarterback as well. Grossmont, just been fantastic all year. Obviously, they played Helix, the machine, last week, but I'm looking for West Hills to really show up, and maybe an upset is on the horizon. However, you do have Jamie Odom that's been pretty awesome this year. He hasn't thrown a pick, I think, in 4 weeks now, and he's been doing great with his legs. Then you got your big runner, which is Chevelle Sterling. He's just been on fire, like I said, until they ran into Helix. But I'm going to actually go for the upset.
Oh, well, yeah, throwing one out here at the end of the picking West Hills. Could possibly be Grossmont, maybe licking their wounds from Helix and come out flat against West Hills. How are you looking at this?
Yeah, I don't mind the upset pick there at all. I do think it's a little more one-sided than Dave has it, but really that West Hills El Capitan game, that ended up being the game of the week in the East County, and it was a huge game because what happened with West Hills' victory 7-3 over El Cap, that vaulted them over El Cap and right into the playoffs, put El Cap outside of the playoffs right now. So good job, West Hills. They earned that playoff berth. Even if they lose this game, which they're expected to do, they're likely in the playoffs. They had 4 interceptions in that game. Jewell had 2 picks. Jake Mayhew, Noah Quigley also interceptions. So they did a real nice job on El Cap, who took to the air a little more frequently than we have seen when they have Olivier in the lineup. Jordan Young rushed for 100 yards, and he threw a touchdown pass to Cade Weaver. That was the West Hills score. Grossmont knows they should have done better against Helix. The score score was so lopsided. 10 dropped passes. So that just shows a little bit of nerves in that game, and once you fall behind, you're a little bit deflated. So no problem there. I think if Grossmont gets back on track, hangs on to the ball, makes those completions, they'll be right in this game for sure with West Hills. Looking ahead, Grossmont will get a bye in the playoffs in Division One. That's pretty much a certainty as long as they win this game. So I think that's where Dave's coming in with maybe they could get a little bit of a lull. They know what's going to happen when they go in. They're going to be in the Division One playoffs. West Hills, meanwhile, could be facing a team such as Steel Canyon in the first round of the playoffs. Now, the CIF does reserve the right to move teams in accordance to locales, or also if they think that the matchup is not going to be as attractive. They can move them 1 or 2 spots.
Sure.
As it stands right now, West Hills would be at Steel Canyon. I know we wouldn't mind seeing that game again, a rematch of the game a few weeks ago that Steel Canyon won. So anyway, Grossmont and West Hills, I've got Grossmont winning this one by 3 touchdowns.
Okay, all right. El Capitan at Steel Canyon. How are you looking at this one, Dave?
Well, after El Cap last week, I think that Ron Berner's got to be scratching his head. I mean, that he was, after talking to him last week, he was actually expecting to win that game, and to lose that game, I think that took some wind out of the sails. However, never count out a Vaquero is what I've heard throughout the league. They play with a lot of heart. But with Fishburne, he's playing safety, he's playing kicker, he's a punter. He's pretty much the Steel Canyon athlete, if you will, on the field. I think he's going to have that defense chasing him all over the field. However, El Capitan, in the past, all year, has kept it pretty close, as we saw last week. So the Lovato brothers, they're pretty good in the secondary. I don't know what the situation is offensively. Haven't heard anything different about Hauser coming back. But he's done a pretty good job overall. It was a pretty tough game last week. It was both defenses in that game. An upset over Steel Canyon would put the Vaqueros over the hump and probably squeeze into the playoffs. But El Cap's on the bubble, I would say right now, looking in, and they have to win this game. But I'm looking more Steel Canyon. Their defense also, some up-and-coming guys too. Spencer Gegg was great last week. Cornerback Robert Whitehead has been great in the secondary too. Son of former El Cajon Valley coach Norman Whitehead. And I'm actually looking for the speed of the offense, defense, special teams. The Cougars defeated the Vaqueros last year in Lakeside in a nail-biting 15-7 win. I think it's going to be the Cougars 27-13.
Okay.
Yeah, there were 7 turnovers in that game last year, and I think that's a tribute to the defenses. A lot of times we say that turnovers are luck created, or we can't really predict turnovers. But I think when you have 2 hard-hitting defenses like that, then that could happen again in this game. No doubt about it, Dave. It's a win-and-you're-in situation for El Capitan. They're sitting in 13th place. You beat a team that's better than you, you're going to jump up a few spots, and they're going to be into the postseason. So they're going to have to get this road win. Because of their victory earlier in the season against Valley Center, if El Capitan could win this game, they'll actually exceed the computer's expectations this season. So we think El Capitan is having a down year. They're about right where they should be, and this could be the game, despite last week's tough loss, that could propel them and get them a little bit of momentum into the playoffs and win this nice league game as well. You mentioned Oliveri. He had almost 30 passes, 15 of 29 last week against West Hills, which is a lot of passing, but there were a lot of them came on those last drives. They were trying to get something going. They were only down 1 score. Connor Rusa had 91 yards rushing, but the key stat for El Capitan offensively, 0 touchdowns. Cougars, big plays, you mentioned it. Jordan Anderson had a 73-yard touchdown reception from Fishburne last week. And on defense, a big play. I want to mention Marvin James, big man with football, 86-yard fumble return for Steel Canyon in their win. Deontay McKinney is playing in this game. He had 100 yards rushing in the game last year against El Cap, including a touchdown. I've got Steel Canyon winning this one by 16 points.
Okay. Now, Christian has a pretty tough opponent in Point Loma over at El Cajon Valley, so a little change of venue for them. How are you looking at this one?
Well, you have the Patriots. They just beat Scripps Ranch last week, and I mean, it was 61-13. It was just ridiculous. But this should be a true test for the Patriots to prove that they are prepared and worthy of playing a top-ranked squad in bigger divisions. I think this will be actually their toughest game of the season, to be honest. The Falcons last week, I mean, they were just tearing up the secondary. Brad Jeremiah was 14 of 15 for 250 yards, 3 touchdowns. Fullback Javier Jimenez, he marched into the end zone scoring 3 touchdowns. I mean, it was just touchdown mania as far as the Christian High Patriots go. They secure a first round Division I home game with a win and a win over Point Loma this Friday, or a Lincoln loss would give the Patriots the Eastern title. I'm looking at, in this one, there's a couple of standouts also for the Pointers. Quarterback Kyle Grady, 39 of 72 passing for 701 yards, 7 touchdown passes. Also very shifty with his feet. Grady had 45 carries for 302 yards and 6 touchdowns for a total of 13 touchdowns in just the last 5 games. And then also Malik Moore, he's one of the top receivers, 10 catches, 174 yards for 1 touchdown in the last 5. And defensively, look out for J.L. Skinner, 31 tackles, and linebacker Anthony Carty has a team leading 4 sacks. So I think that they're playing a pretty tough defense if I'm looking at this right, and I think it's going to be pretty close, but I'm going to have to take the Pointers 28-24.
They're playing a very tough defense. These guys have a great pass rush, and that has blocking the pass rush has not been Christian's forte when they've stepped up in class. And that's been the problem each time, especially in those losses to Santa Fe Christian and to Lincoln. And that has been the problem on when they've moved up in class to try to beat those teams. Now the Pointers' losses are to also top teams, El Camino, Ramona, and Saints. Those are almost, those are all top 10 teams in the county. So all their losses, they have 3 losses, they've come to the top teams in the county. Other than Helix and Mission Hills, so that's the problem that Christian faces in this game. The Pointers do run at a 3-to-1 ratio, so maybe they can bottle it up in there and just try to get out in front with that offense. That's going to be tough enough. They're going to have to throw more short passes, do that play where they have the slots come in motion and flip the ball to them, and do the things that Christian does to try to offset Point Loma's pass rush, because Point Loma can get to the quarterback. They've proven that. You mentioned the playoffs possibilities right now. I have them penciled in as traveling to Westview for an opening round game, so that could be a tough one. They'd have to get an upset here to move up in class. I've got Point Loma winning this one by 10 points.
All right, Santana and Mount Miguel taking on each other for their last game of the regular season. How are you looking at this one?
I actually think this is one of them that is overlooked. I think this would be one of the top games to see this week. Mount Miguel's coming off a bye to heal some of their wounded and should be well rested and poised to grab a victory at home. Mugabe Miller, he played last time against Granite Hills. He didn't do too bad, but I think that week of rest is definitely going to be in Mount Miguel's favor. Mount Miguel will be the favorite at home, and coming into the contest, the Matadors are ranked 9th in the county in the San Diego CIF Division III, and Santana is ranked at number 10. So it's, like I said, this is going to be one of those close ones. Both of these squads could make the playoffs, but a win could be possible for a first-round home game. I was talking to Coach McDade at the beginning of the year. I remember asking him where he thinks he would sit with this squad this year. He said 3-7 or 4-6, so he predicted his season pretty well himself. He said we just play so many tough teams that, and it's a tough year, but he was right on the money. The Matadors will try to establish a run with Shamar Green, 134 carries, 760 yards, 6 touchdowns and 4 in the air receiving, and the other key component of the offensive attack, as I said before, was quarterback Muggaby Miller, and he's 62 of 124, 1,211 yards, 8 touchdowns, and no picks. Capable legs, 78 carries, 255 yards, and 4 touchdowns. On the other side, you have more of a passing attack, and that's coming from Josh Odewall. And you know, they've been mixing it up pretty well, though. They're getting their running backs healthy. You got Brooks Mutah, 36 carries, 224 yards, 6 touchdowns, and that's only in 5 games. So he's really lit it up coming off of the ground. And then wide receiver Devon Chestnut, a favorite target of Josh's, 38 catches for 551 and 5 touchdowns. Should be a smash mouth, run first, play action defensive contest, I'm predicting. And I think when it's all said and done, they get down in this slugfest. It's going to be 24-21, and I think Mount Miguel's going to come out on top.
Okay.
Last year in Santee, the final score was 47-41. Mount Miguel over Santana, so it got a little out of hand. Shamar Green rushed for 290 yards in that one and 3 touchdowns. And Josh Odewall, he threw for almost 350 yards, and Santana had almost 600 yards of total offense. If you want to see some offense, head out to Mount Miguel this Friday night for, as Dave called it, the closest game might be of the whole season if you talk about how they're rated right next to each other in Division III. Well, what that means is that they're both ticketed for the postseason, because one way or the other, it almost doesn't matter who wins. They're not going to jostle too much as far as their positioning in Division III. So I've got them both in the playoffs right now. As it stands, I see Mount Miguel facing a team such as Escondido on the road to open the postseason, while Santana, they might get another trip out to the desert to face Imperial. And they've had some successes, we've noted, out there in the desert, or at least played very well. Hey, last week we got a look at Santana's next quarterback, if you will, Nathan Temple, who came in and threw a touchdown pass, and that was interesting to note. But Landon Wood was the man of the game for Santana. He had a fumble recovery, a touchdown, a safety, a block punt, 10 tackles. Says here he also closed the snack bar at the end of the night up there at Santana's homecoming. So anyways, Mount Miguel's going to win this one. I've got them by a touchdown.
Okay. Next up, Helix travels to Valhalla. Just kind of a note to anybody planning on attending that game. It'll be a 6 o'clock start time, as there's no JV game. Valhalla down to third string, maybe even lower quarterback. Some guys having to play that aren't familiar with the position. Could be a long night for the Norsemen.
Yeah, John, you know, it's been a rough year for the Orange Nation all year. Closing out the season, facing the Scotties, and as hot as they are on your turf. The toughest question for the visiting Highlanders is, should we rest all of our starters, or should we just let them play a half? I think that's going to be the biggest key of the night, is how they want to approach that. Maybe if they're up by 3 or 4 touchdowns, they might want to do that. At the same time, looking at the other side of it, do you want to have your momentum shift? So I don't know. That's going to be a tough call on the coaching staff. Helix is ranked 2nd in the county. Valhalla is ranked number 19. Maybe the phrase, it's usually Sunday, but on any given Friday. That's the only thing I could say for Valhalla. After the recent rout of the Foothillers, 57-3, and that 21st defeat of Grossmont. I mean, really for the Norsemen, maybe we could get some good runs in there. And then I was looking at it now. We're going to have tight end Kyle Greigel. Is that the one that's going to be starting behind center?
Could be.
Okay. And as he was mentioning, Ramon was mentioning, the first touchdown versus the Cougars, if it was not for the jarring hit by Cougars cornerback Marvin James, who also ran the recovered fumble, 87 yards, as you mentioned before. The Norsemen could end on a high note with a upset, though, but I'm looking at a 44-7 Helix win.
Yeah, I mean, Helix is one of the 2 super elite teams right now. Most people are just focusing on Helix and Mission Hills when it comes to the postseason. And actually, Helix better look out. I mean, there's some other teams when they get there that they'll have to worry about before we ever get to that point. But Helix, I just want to mention, only gained 3 first-place votes from the media out of the 28 media members this week. So they got 5 first-place votes. That was after they beat Grossmont by 54 points, and Mission Hills won only 24-23 over Torrey Pines, but Torrey Pines also a pretty elite team. So anyways, I show Helix, there won't be much movement in the Open Division. I show them as most likely hosting El Camino in the first round of the Open Division playoffs. That would be in 2 weeks. There's no first round in the Open Division, only 8 teams. Sophomore Fato Noah returned for last week's game. He had the broken hand for the last 4 weeks. He rushed for 191 yards, was the East County Sports Offensive Player of the Week. He scored 3 touchdowns. Valhalla, we've talked about it, as decimated as they are by the injuries, they're going to have to compete in the postseason. They're forced to because of their status in Division 1. Dave mentioned they're ranked 19th in Division 1, which is one from the bottom. They'll be on the road, as we mentioned a few weeks ago, probably playing a team like Olympian, although that's not set yet. They played last year twice. Interestingly, they played a playoff game. It was only 14-0. So unfortunate how far Valhalla has fallen right now, mostly due to these injuries. I wanted to mention, and maybe you saw him last week, sophomore fullback. You mentioned using Shimke this week and just trying to get something done, but Keegan Baker was definitely a bright spot against Steel Canyon. He had several runs for yards, including a couple back-to-back carries where he was really pounding in the line and knocking those Steel Canyon guys back. So that was a real nice spot, even though they lost 45-0. I thought he was the player of the game for Valhalla, frankly. They know what's going on. Helix knows the situation at Valhalla. They're not going to look to... Sure, they're going to make some spectacular plays that entertain the fans out here in southeastern El Cajon, but they'll be sure to put on the brakes. I've got Helix by 7 touchdowns.
Okay. Valley Center at Monte Vista.
You know, I think Hamamoto has definitely got his teaming gear for this one. I mean, Valley Center, they got 1 game on the season. And then I think after that tough loss against Granite Hills, I think that Monte Vista is going to want to end on a high note. I think it's going to be a lot of Javon, and I think it's going to be a defensive battle. However, I think it's going to be all Monte Vista, at least by 4 touchdowns.
Calling it out, Monte Vista over Valley Center.
No, I like that because Valley Center, I mean, they've had a great season. I mean, they're 8-1. They're starting to get some votes down. But hey, you know who their only 1 loss was to? El Capitan. But anyways, Monte Vista, they're coming in 5-4. But make no mistake, they're in the top 4 seeds in Division 4, and those 4 seeds are going nowhere. In fact, they're kind of the 4 teams and then everybody else. So they're going to be getting a bye in the postseason. And this is a great tune-up facing a team like Valley Center, obviously a playoff caliber opponent from a higher league, which is really going to give them a big test in this one. Wanted to mention also in Division 4 that those other 3 top seeds in there with Monte Vista are combined 25-2. And if Monte Vista doesn't win this game, they're an underdog in this game. They're going to be 5-5. So that shows you how tough a schedule they've played. It's the toughest schedule in Division 4. So Monte Vista probably worthy of that seeding, and they're going to definitely give Valley Center a battle despite being an underdog. Monte Vista plays every game like it's a playoff game, it seems. Also, I want to mention that Valley Center lost to an East County team, Granite Hills, earlier in the season. Beat Granite Hills, I'm sorry, but that was a game in the North County. They beat them. Monte Vista opened last week's game with a touchdown drive that culminated in a pass for a touchdown, believe it or not. Emil Henderson to Amir Conley got them on the board through the air in that big game against Granite that eventually Granite went on to win. So no doubt, underdogs here. I've got Valley Center winning this one by a touchdown. I'm going to root for Dave's pick.
You bet. El Cajon Valley at Granite Hills.
You know, the Eagles locked up the title. I mean, another win is going to definitely propel them and really against a struggling El Cajon team offensively. As I mentioned earlier, Tim Estes, Santana head coach, had mentioned he was impressed with the defensive stand that they made last week. But the offense is, they've been having trouble all year. I mean, the last time they actually got a win, with the exception of the forfeit win over there in Sweetwater, was Claremont. And that was the second game of the season. and that was just after Paris Begonia had left Elkhorn Valley. But that was the last time that they truly won a game, and they really looked great on offense and defense. Daryl Davis, Miguel Garner, I mean, if they could just get something going to make a competitive game, that would be nice, because it's just been all defense, if anything, from Elkhorn Valley. But, I mean, with everything that Granite Hills has, with Jake Siegfried, I mean, 66 of 124, 743 yards, 7 aerial touchdowns, with only 7 picks. And then, of course, his legs, rushing 130 times for 911 yards, and a team leading 14 touchdowns on the ground. So on the ground, he's leading the running backs as well. But then you also, let's not forget about Big Tyler Gonzalez, 72 carries, 580 yards and 6 touchdowns, along with, as I mentioned before, the new addition, Kayvon Martin, 51 carries for 464 yards and 6 touchdowns, and that's only in 4 games. So he's really coming on, and he's really helping out in the running back situation, so they can change it up a little bit. Not to mention, let's never forget tight end, defensive end, William Burton, 23 receptions, 213 yards and 4 touchdowns. But it's on the other side of the ball that he's been spectacular. He's got 39 tackles and 2.5 sacks. And I think who gets lost in the shuffle is the leading tackler, believe it or not, for the Granite Hills Eagles is Ethan Bishop. And he's got 77 total tackles, 2 interceptions, and 1 caused fumble. So there's just really too many weapons on both sides of the ball for the Granite Hills Eagles. So in this one, I'm going to say Granite Hills 35-7.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's a mismatch, and we're not worried about that necessarily. What I'm worried about is that this could be the last battle of Madison Avenue for a while. I believe this is the year where next year West Hills and Granite Hills will be switching leagues. I believe that is next year. So no reason to schedule this game again right now. I mean, it's just 2 programs on opposite ends of the spectrum. So let's celebrate out there this matchup, this rivalry, the peace pipe, if I'm not mistaken, is battle of this one. So El Cajon Valley, though, let's not short them. They're going to be in the playoffs, and they could face a team like Chula Vista, which beat El Cajon Valley 40-20. So maybe the Braves can use this one to get physical and toughen up for that game and do something, win it, surprise someone in the playoffs. The Eagles will win this game, an impressive 8th win of the season. That's very, very strong. Very, very strong an 8-win regular season. Make no mistake. However, Granite Hills is going to be quote-unquote rewarded with a first-round home game against a possibly very tough-looking right now Mira Mesa team. So we'll see how that all shakes out. Just want to add, when I talk about these playoff matchups, they look to be set on Friday nights, but don't go in thinking you're playing somebody, because the CIF, like I said, they still meet on Saturday morning, and they may move a team or 2 here or there. Wait for the official release by CIF. Don't go making prognostications off of the internet on Friday night, getting everybody in a jumble. We've all fallen into that trap before. I got Granite Hills winning this one by 7 touchdowns.
All right, just a couple more local games to talk about. Mountain Empire at Vincent Memorial.
You know, after completing their 2nd shutout in a row, 24-0 over the Orange Glen last Friday, the Redhawks, with the win over the 5th-ranked Vincent Memorial, would actually create a tie for the Manzanita League title. Quarterback Gabriel Hydorn, who passed for 2 touchdowns and ran for another last week, has been fantastic all season and improving as the season continues. Key starter Dallas Prince, 32 catches, 427 yards, 3 touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, and most importantly, a team-leading 5 interceptions, and the 3rd game in a row with a pick. So Dallas Prince is on both sides of the ball. He's just been fantastic. And the leading tackler and partly responsible for the 2 shutouts, Cameron Will, with 136 tackles. 136 tackles. Vincent Memorial was beaten earlier this season by one of our Grossmont teams, Santana, out there in the desert. Quarterback Eduardo Valenzuela, though, is 131 for 225 with 31 touchdowns. He also has 71 carries for 624 yards and a team leading 8 touchdowns on the ground for an impressive 39 touchdowns for the regular season. So be on the lookout for Eduardo, because I think he's going to be the one they're looking for in the secondary and on the ground. The Scots have an impressive, sure-handed group of receivers that are very quick. The Red Hawks secondary, like I said, is going to be combined with the pass rush of Blake Gerald and Cameron Will. So if they can get that good rush off the edge, maybe they can put a little dent in the Scots. But on this one, I'm definitely going to go with not Mountain Empire, I'm sorry. Vincent Memorial, 35-28.
You gave him and you took it away, right? Like that. You had all those Red Hawks on the edge of
I
the seat.
want to pick Mountain Empire so bad in this game, but like Dave said, I mean, it's been a great season for Vincent Memorial, and in fact, that Santana win over them was one of only 2 losses they've had this season. Vincent Memorial is the number 1 seeded team in Division 5, so they've had a great season. They're going to be favored to win that division championship. You said it, Dave. The Red Hawks somehow, if they can pull this off, tri-championship is what it would be in the Manzanita, because Calipatria would be the team that ends up helping there and ends up creating a 3-way tie. It could propel the Red Hawks up 5 spots and into the playoffs. It would take a little bit of magic and a little bit of work with the numbers to get in there. I don't think they can get in even with a win, but you got to win to have a chance to get in. The Scots won in Pine Valley last year 42-17. That was also in the season finale, so they're going to have to turn that around and do it on the road. I want to mention the Red Hawks' Wyatt Mann. He's had an exceptional season, over 700 yards receiving. I've got Vincent Memorial winning this one by 3 scores.
All right, our last high school game is Foothills Christian at Calvin Christian.
Yeah, this is basically the Ocean League title game against the Calvary Christian Crusaders. This is the rivalry, if you will, in 8-man football. You always talk about how you love 8-man football. Well, this is pretty much it right here. These are the 2 best teams, I think. Julian, we've mentioned they've moved ahead of Foothills Christian, but remember, Foothills Christian is the defending section champion, and they're going up against a team that's 9-0. So this is it for the regular season. Now they're going to meet again, we're pretty sure, in the postseason, but why not get out there and see it twice? The Knights won the section title game 44-38 over the Crusaders last season. Now the Knights' only loss last season came against the Crusaders in the season opener. So you see, when these 2 teams lose, it's to them. It's to the other team.
Yeah.
On senior night last week, Foothills Christian beat the number 4 seed in 8-man football, San David Jewish Academy, 30-8. Daniel Laoki had 2 touchdowns in that one. I've got Calvin Christian winning this one by a field goal.
Oh, wow. There you go. That's a big pick here. So
they'll get the revenge.
Okay, they'll get the revenge. So that does it for prep picks, but let's talk a little bit about junior college football. We got Grossmont College taking on Golden West.
Yeah, well, this week, Grossmont's going to be hosting Golden West on Saturday. The Griffins come in 1-2 in the National Southern League, while Golden West is 2-1. But maybe this is an opponent that Grossmont matches up pretty well with. I mean, they beat them last year in an incredible game, 40-28. What happened in that game was Grossmont got out to a lead in the first half, 27-14. Well, Golden West, the Rustlers, came all the way back to take a 28-27 lead, but Grossmont got the final 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to win 40-28. Brad Cagle had 2 touchdown passes in the fourth quarter, 4 touchdowns for the game. Grossmont's really trying to get the last 3 games off their shoulders. They've allowed more than 75 points in 2 of their last 3 games. They lost last week's game to Saddleback 77-24 in a game that Grossmont actually led 7-0 midway through the first quarter. Don't laugh, you guys, come on. And so I like Grossmont to actually be able to hang in this one. I think it's a good matchup for them. They really need this one to really say that they've had a fun season. Okay. So let's take Grossmont to win this one at home by 3 points.
All right, well, thanks for watching us here on the East County Sports Report. Of course, more details can be found on eastcountysports.com. Don't forget to join us on Friday for the East County Short Report. We throw up those highlights so you can join them right away. And, of course, next week we'll see you right here on the East County Sports Report for our playoff football preview. All right, we'll see you.